Let's go for the actual score. Europa, natural law.
Greetings, humanity, and welcome to Europa Natural Law, a roundtable transmission dedicated to healing the madness, badness, and sadness plaguing our beautiful, bountiful world. Through regaining our sanity, reclaiming our inborn sovereignty, and honoring our inherent responsibility, we can improve reality. We can do it. I'm Nemo Jones, reporting for beauty from Devonshire, Albion, where I write, speak, and sing for freedom, reason, and beauty. You can find all my links on the World Wide Web at nemojones.com. And I'll pass it round to whoever is next in line when I do that. So that's Yvonne.
Yeah, it's me. Hi, I'm Yvonne, and I'm from Norfolk.
Derek Barlocelli out here in southern France.
Jeffrey Phillips from California.
Allie from California.
Chris Nelson in Canada.
Great. So welcome, everyone. We're going to talk today about, let's try that view, about self-respect, which is, again, a very wide-ranging topic, something I think, I'm looking forward to getting into. I thought I'd just throw in at the start, before I open it up, the concept, which I don't remember really ever hearing before I read The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke, which is a book that I think we're all familiar with here. And the concept, well, I suppose it's more a reality of the infinite value of the individual. And something that's just so great to sort of like meditate on, because it's sort of a mind-blowing concept. I find it kind of like really is that kind of, you know, one of those moments of like, the more you really think about that, what that really means and entails, it's kind of, it seems to open one's consciousness. And it's quite an unfamiliar concept. So I thought I'd just drop that in at the beginning. Let's get into it. Who'd like to jump in on self-respect?
Let's just get the definition correct with the respect, RE suffix or prefix, and then spectare is the root word. I think it's Latin. So are we actually being a spectator in our lives, but also a manifester? So there's a couple things I wanted to mention in regards to the aspects of how one can properly speculate their lives a little bit more seriously and effectively, I guess. Yes, there's a lot of introspection going into retrospecting things about yourself, getting a multispectral view of things, seeing the 360-degree spectrum of reality and life, and also understanding objective reality, objective morality, and being able to be the objective observer, meaning your subjective perspective is not clouding that clear objective vision of things. So yeah, it's kind of like looking in the mirror and being able to see everything, the good and the bad. And I know it's kind of hard for a lot of people to recognize and realize and admit the not so pleasant or beautiful aspects of themselves. And, this alludes to a lot of things in regards to shadow work and all that stuff. So I suspect that will be something brought up. And just gonna crack the ice with that little play on words, if you will. And yeah, I think people kind of get the gist of where I was going with that. So yeah.
So, without a balanced, regulated, healthy ego, it's pretty impossible to successfully do shadow work and pull yourself out of Mount Stupid. Yikes. So I've had a privileged enough life to be involved in a lot of things in Los Angeles. I was in a band. I used to do TV shows, movies, music videos. I was a male model. It's kind of lame. But I did runways in Japan. I was very privileged. And in all of that, the excess and the ego, I was a sane person put into an insane situation and had to face my dark side because I was a crazy person for a while there. Just the drugs and the alcohol and the lifestyle, just completely crazy. But we're supposed to be putting ourselves in high risk situations when we're growing up. We're supposed to be trying ourselves and facing, like I said, facing our dark side and finding out, how dark we are, and then learn to control it. And, falling from, or not falling, choosing to abandon that lifestyle was very difficult. And I've had a lot of, there was a lot of ups and downs. I went through a very dark period. When I had the most money in the bank I've ever had, we had a major label give us $450,000, and I did everything. I got the house in the Hollywood Hills. I got the sports car, the revolving door of women, all the crazy stuff that you would do living the rock star lifestyle. I had to pull myself out of that to become, who I am today and not let it kill me, basically. So having self-respect, I was not respecting myself back then in the least bit when I was in my 20s and going into my 30s. It really wasn't till I had kids that it kind of, I needed to put my life in a different direction. And, it takes a lot of work. I still am learning every single day. But that's about it.
I think it's a bit helpful to mention the link between self-respect and what you started with shadow work. Kind of jumped over that. It seemed the connection. So Jeffrey's mentioning shadow work, and well, how does that have to do with self-respect? Because you're supposed to be looking again. So as Derek mentioned, it's to look at, to see. That's spectare, and re is again. So you look at again. What are you looking at? Well, you look at other people. When it comes to self-respect, well, that's directing that vision towards yourself. So you're looking at yourself, you're re-examining yourself, and that's the introspection, the self-reflection, and taking a look at, well, who are you? What are you doing ultimately, right? What's your behavior? So our behaviors are a manifestation generated from our internal makeup. So when we're creating certain things in reality altogether, well, that comes from that principle of mentalism, of what's in us or what is in us, or we have a lot of beliefs, and some of the beliefs can be true, but we haven't been able to verify them, but we believe they're true, and then we're going to act upon them. But some beliefs can be false, and we think they're true, and then we act upon them and create into reality. And well, when you act on falsity, you're going to be bringing that falsity, that false aspect into reality. And it's not going to be, usually it's not beneficial to you, but it can be. But usually when it's beneficial to you, it's something false, then it's not beneficial for others. So that's when you have people doing immorality. They want something to gain for themselves, and they don't care necessarily how it affects the other. They just want to benefit for themselves at the expense of others. And that's part of doing that self-respect, is seeing how are you contributing to that initiation of harm towards others, towards other beings, and what can you do to stop doing that. You're not powerless. You have the ability, you have free will. You exercise your will to choose how you behave, and you can change how you behave. And that's the ultimate goal of doing self-respect. It's not to just see ways that you can change, or that you can improve, or the things that you're doing wrong and then do nothing about it. Ultimately, it's to do something about it. And if we're trying to make the world better, well, that always starts with ourselves. So in the great work, well, that's trying to get rid of evil or slavery or immorality or chaos in the world. That's self-inflicted suffering in terms of all of humanity, self-inflicting that upon ourselves in the aggregate. Well, that all starts with ourselves and what we're contributing towards that dynamic, towards outputting that negative into reality through our behavior that creates immorality and harm for others. And so when you're looking at the great work, well, there's always that internal alchemy. So self-respect can be synonymous with shadow work and alchemy, as that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to transmute aspects of ourselves that are falser, lesser, lower, unrealer, and trying to actualize and individuate ourselves towards that higher potential of what is higher, truer, and realer in alignment with moral truth.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I was going to come from the perspective of being born into this realm and how we're actually conditioned. I don't. The way my experience in being brought up, self-respect never really came into the equation, because everyone around me and the system that I was born into, everyone's more, their energy, their mind energy is actually just concentrating on like getting through the day, going to work, going to school, doing all those things. So yeah, there's the people around me that their self-respect doesn't actually come into it, but everyone's very consciously aware of the effects of not having self-respect. And I'd just like to, if we can, go down those lines a bit, because I think that's where the majority of people are at. They're people living in the realm of effects, and there's a lot of behaviors that are going on that clearly signify that there's not much self-respect going on in the world. And a lot of victims. What's people's thoughts on that?
The actual definition, the etymology, respect, look again. It's not what we expect the etymology to be, I think. People use the term respect. It means, interestingly enough, it's kind of come to mean subservience to authority, I would say. That's a sort of meaning that's carried with it. You know, respect your elders, respect your teacher, respect authority. That those kind of ideas. You know, and in fact, using the actual etymology, it's a good idea to look again at authority. But that's not what people mean when they say respect authority or respect, you know, some figure. So the meaning, the etymological meaning has kind of drifted out of consciousness, I'd say, and we have this kind of other meaning, which is something akin to a kind of religious belief, I'd say. When I sort of feel into it, it's kind of like respect. You know, you're not showing me respect. You know, these kinds of ideas that people say. You know, I need respect, or respect the such and such thing. It's kind of like you know, give it its due. It's kind of taken on this meaning, which is like the thing that's being respected is worthy of this quality that's called, you know, the offering of respect, which is subservience or kind of acknowledgement of value. But the actual etymology of the word is very clearly telling us exactly what it really means. To look again at the thing, look, and what we're talking about today, look again at ourselves, which is one of the great challenges of, you know, of a spiritual existence, of the spiritual reality of existence, is to keep going back and looking and say, well, I know I've learned something, but I also know that I'm inhabiting this kind of like these layers of delusion, and that's the water I'm swimming in, and I'm sharing these delusions with other people. They're widely held. So trying to look again, well, what do I have to look again at everything? You know, it's a big ask to really continue to do that, and to sort of dig, you know, lift up a corner of something or what's under there, look again at traumas of one's life. You know, I mean, I just remembered I was talking with old friend of mine this week, and I remember we ended up talking about something that is a period, quite a short period of my life, where I was really traumatized, and it wasn't something that I'd actually ever really considered and actually put any introspection, any respect into. I hadn't really considered it and thought about this period, because I wasn't really young, you know, I was like early teens or whatever. And so I didn't sort of think, oh, that's one of these formative things. But actually, when I looked at it, I thought, God, that was actually really intense. How did that affect me? What was really going on there? How does that tie in with my earlier story in life? Which, you know, to me, this is a big part of shadow work, you know, is this journey of, you know, what some people call psychoanalysis or whatever, however you want to think of it. You know, it's like looking at these dark aspects, these scary aspects of oneself, of things where you go, ooh, I don't feel comfortable with that. I didn't enjoy that, or whatever it is. I didn't react well to that situation. You know, what's going on there? That's all of those questions are looking again. And there's really no limit to how much we can do that, I guess.
Yeah, and just thinking about how Nemo, you brought up that the book End of All Evil, looking at that, the central theme being the basis for human evil and sort of immorality being theft, right? Everything kind of goes back to some form of theft. And generally we look at that as the external, what is happening, how is the government stealing from us, how is our bodily autonomy being stolen, how is our life being stolen, our our finances, the products of our labor, but thinking about that in relation to self-respect and the internal and shadow work. How are we lacking self-respect by not turning inward and looking at parts of ourselves? We are performing theft on ourselves, essentially. We are stealing from ourselves, reaching our true potential by not diving in, so to speak, and going deeper. And Nemo, like you said, looking at our trauma, and like what Jeffrey was saying, like our life experiences, how are we blinding ourselves from really really examining and growing and healing from our traumas and our life experiences. I think that's kind of an interesting aspect, just because, again, it all comes back to some form of theft, and we are stealing from ourselves when we are focusing so much on the external, or not focusing on ourselves and not growing.
Word. We got to keep growing. That's what nature does. We got to be, get that symbiotic relationship, right? And do you respect your mother and Mother Nature? Like, is it really that funny? No. Yeah, I was laughing to myself earlier, thinking about what Nemo was talking about, and and these are prime opportunities when you're interacting with people, especially when a little bit of an argument or misunderstanding arises. And like, for example, someone's like, "Hey, why you gotta disrespect me like that?" Then you come in and be like, "Oh, well, actually, I was actually respecting you," and then you go into like, I'm looking again at you, and then trying, and to look again is to have that more objective perspective, right? So you see it for what it is, and hey, if it's a piece of shit, sometimes you just gotta call a spade, and if they don't like it, that's just tough tits or whatever, right? So there's ways to I don't know, and that example, is, in the way I worded it, it's not going to de-escalate that scenario, but you kind of get the drift of where I'm going with that. But back to just the self, and are people actually taking in the proper time and attention to set up the proper space for them to do the proper introspection, right? And inspect whatever the heck is going on and kind of occulted within them, and kind of excavate all these things. Shadow work is about, making the darkness conscious, right? So what about, and within our unconscious, subconscious mind is going on? Shine some light up in there and, get to work, right? So, and that kind of goes along the lines of, asking questions, like Nemo was saying a little. First of all, do you see yourself less than, other things, Why would anyone want to be less than any other human being? Are we not, all have that equal, just base human value, Don't be less. And that's kind of, say that, fast 20 times, and you're going to be saying the word bless, religious connotation type of stuff. Things to consider. Not like it's that big of a deal to, but anyways, abracadabra, mother lovers, what we speak is what we create, along the lines of that phrase, right? So, how is that self-talk? How do you see yourself in the mirror? First of all, do you ask yourselves, like, what are you actually doing? What are you actually thinking? Are all these thoughts my own? Are all these emotions that I'm running on necessary? Am I in control of my emotions and all this stuff? Do I feel flabbergasted and out of control with certain things? What is triggering me? What am I eating? Am I respecting my body politic? Do I feel like shit because I'm hungover because I drank too much? Am I coughing up a lung because I smoked too much? And yeah, I smoke myself, but it's organic tobacco, and so things to consider. And and questions to also ask is, what am I identifying with? All this external stuff trying to pull your heartstrings towards them when we need to be the proper masters of ceremony and walking to the rhythm of our own heartbeats, type of thing. So I'll end it on that little musical jingle, in a sense. But yeah.
Right. Okay. I just. Sorry, I'm not sure what I've done there. 1 second. Sorry, Chris. Yeah, I was just going to say, it's like, why do you look again? Well, it's because you're trying to see something you missed the first time, right? So let's say you have an interaction with someone, you're not understanding each other, you're like working at cross purposes. You're going to to really truly respect them is not to say, okay, fine, you have it your way, you're right. That's not respect. Respect is to say, how can I I'm trying to not misuse the word respectful. How can I engage, maintain integrity, and have a sincere attitude towards actually understanding this person and their shadow, which I don't understand and probably they don't understand. So it's trying to sort of see almost behind them as well. You're trying to kind of look, well, what have I missed? Because it seems like this person's just being a dick, or whatever it is. But what's really going on here, and you're more likely to get through that situation in a, kind of get some resolution out of that situation if you can really open your eyes and really keep looking, well, what am I missing here? In that kind of open-minded way. I don't know, that's what I'm thinking about. That's more about obviously respecting externally, but just reflecting on it.
Getting raised in our society and by our parents, we end up with a lot of trauma right out of the get-go, and that kind of dictates how much self-respect we have for ourselves growing up. And it's important to get past that as soon as possible, because if you don't have self-respect for yourself, you're not going to stick up for yourself, and you're definitely not going to stick up for other people. And what we need is more people sticking up for themselves and what they actually believe in, instead of sticking up for political parties or whatever bad opinions there are. But without and then having too much self-respect and too much confidence, you get stuck up Mount Stupid on the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you are disrespecting yourself by having too much respect for yourself, and you get closed off to learning anything new, and you become unlearnable, or unteachable. Yeah.
Yeah, so going on the...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Chris, go.
All right, put me on the spot then, why don't you? No, I'm just kidding. I was going to add that, like Passio mentions that jokingly, but I guess horrifyingly, that looking at yourself in the mirror, people like run away from doing that. So they don't want to look at the darkness, the demon, the monster inside of themselves. A lot of people are in denial that there is even that aspect and that quality and those properties within them. So they don't engage in that hero's journey to go through the underworld and fight those monsters, those demons within, and like slay the dragon and come out into a new world, a world that's remade. That's what that journey is all about, ultimately. So if people aren't willing to do that, that's why all of this starts with the self-respect, the shadow work, that inner alchemy. Because if that's not being done, then that person is not going to be able to contribute at all to the healing of the world, because they're not even healing themselves. And and that takes, for whatever reason, they run away from looking at themselves. Though one of the aspects that needs to be developed is self-love. And I think, maybe you need to look at yourself first to develop self-love, but you need to care to look at yourself, to then heal, to then learn to love yourself more, to care for yourself more. So I guess caring would come first. You need to care enough to even look at yourself in the mirror and see what you're a part of. And that involves, as was just mentioned, trauma. We all have trauma, various forms of our parents failing us, not raising us properly, and not teaching us about objective morality because they don't even know it. And it's a perpetuating cycle, intergenerational cycle of the unraised raising the unraised, failing to raise children that then continue to do the same. And when you learn enough and you finally raise yourself with the help of others who, brought you to the door, pointed you in the right direction, and you took up that responsibility to take charge of your own life and then do it for yourself, well, then you're in a position to be able to help your children as you raise them to finally break that chain of like trauma indoctrination, I guess you could call it, that to finally not give those subtle traumas of the various forms of abandonment, like Passio mentions. The parent could be there to provide for the child all their life, and all their needs are met in terms of food and shelter, etc. But if they're there just doing that, then they're probably not necessarily going to be teaching them about objective morality, teaching them about how to think and how to learn, and to know thyself. And all this stuff is important for us to break out of our self-inflicted suffering.
Right, and it's tough when you've I was, well, it's funny actually, because I've had some similar experiences to Jeffrey. I played in bands and that kind of thing, I think it's such a whirlwind, isn't it? Youth is such a whirlwind of just different intentions, different distractions, and I would, like, as Jeffrey said, it said he sort of changed direction when he had kids. I mean, I kind of wish I'd changed direction when I had kids, but I feel like it took me like most of their childhood, or if not all of their childhood, for me to really like start to get straight about what's actually important in life, which is not good for them. I mean, at least I'm doing my best. But I think I'm well aware that I could have done a hell of a lot better, and as we all could, in that it's very tough to maintain if you haven't like educated yourself, and you're having kids, then you've got no headspace to like engage with young kids. It's like, how do you even engage with like shadow work? And it's like everything's happening at you it's pretty tough. So I feel for people in this world, because I mean there's so much, the distractions are just obviously infinite, and they're multiplying really, and all the ways that people can be led from the path of respect, of looking again. The world is like yelling at us, don't look again, look at this, look at me, look at the other, chase after this, you need that, you need the other, and it's like it's tough out there. I'm trying to give myself a break. I don't know.
That's just it, isn't it? That's what I was trying to get at. Like what we've been born into, like all of us here. It's just not a first and foremost, is it? We're not taught to look within. We're not taught to ask questions of ourselves or look in the mirror, as you say, do shadow work. It's not number one priority. Like, it's just getting through life, and as I say, getting a job, career, and all that stuff that's more of a priority. And I'd just like to go back, if anyone's sort of listening to this stuff that doesn't even know what shadow work is, or they're new to this subject, yeah, just look around you. I'd just like to share with you just a tiny little bit of research that I did before I came on this evening about mental illness, because to me, most of the mental illnesses have come about by not doing what we're talking about. And if only people did do that, or they had the skills to do it, or just to know that it even exists, that you can ask yourself these questions, then yeah, we wouldn't have all this mental illness. Anyway, I was reading that, like, from the age of 5, this is just in the UK, it's like 1 in 4 now. People have been diagnosed with mental illness. And then I read on in the article, and they seemed to sort of celebrate. They said it was in 2023 they gave over, what was it? Yeah, 42 million .7 to help mental illness in this country, because it's so vast. But then in brackets it says for research, and I thought, for fuck's sake, what more do you need to know about mental illness? Like, do you really need to be spending like £47 million? And when all you need to do is teach people is to look in the mirror, that it's actually all right to have certain feelings, to have certain thoughts. It's actually okay that you have the power to change those. And the only
Right.
help they were offering people was like charity helplines that you can never get through to anyway. And what they're spending the 47 million pound on is research into building an app that people can tap into, yeah, so they can diagnose someone becoming psychotic quicker, so they can get treatment quicker. So what I'm trying to say to you, anyone listening to this, like, you really do need to start taking responsibility for your own mental health. Stop looking outside. It all does come back to the victim mentality. We have been all brought up trapped in that triangle. You're either a victim to your circumstances and the effects that we're all living, or a rescuer, like I've been all my life, like trying to rescue everyone, and it just keeps you in that trap. It's especially after look what we all went through in the COVID lockdown. It like really did amplify that everyone else is more important than yourself. It's that the communitarianism sort of attitude. So it's almost like people have got a not a guilt, but like it's not normal for people to sort of look in the mirror and go, look, I'm fucking really unhappy in the first place, you know?
Yeah.
It's
I
so yeah,
feel,
anyone listening, just learn, look into shadow work, learn that it's actually okay. It's okay.
No, don't look at it. Yeah, those people need jobs, okay?
Oh,
Do not be giving them the
no, I thought you were
solutions. Solutions are bad. Do
Yeah,
not look into
stay
shadow
on
work.
stay
People
on
need
that
money.
straight and narrow. Yeah, don't deviate from the path. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but that's
I-
it, isn't it, Chris? Like, the help that is out there is only to get you back into the realm of effects again that fucking caused the problems in the first place. Isn't it? It's just
The only solution are drugs, okay? Everybody,
yeah.
antidepressants, SSRIs, SNRIs, that's it.
Yeah,
Do not look into yourself and try to deal with your bullshit.
absolutely. There you go. Show over.
I
Done.
feel like I feel like this is a conversation that keeps coming up actually around me recently. Various people just they're kind of looking, they're like aware that they need to do something. And I feel like this has happened to me a few times recently, where people sort of looking to me for recommendations of people that can help them. I'm like, you realize it's you, yeah? It's like you get that it's you that has to be looked at. And are you, if you know, do you really want to go to someone, whoever, whatever, you know, practice they're doing, therapeutic practice, which may be very valuable, probably is very valuable for some people in some contexts or whatever. But, you know, bear in mind that most people that you're going to go and talk to are going to be statists. You know, they're not going to be anywhere near, like, they're basically going to be in the position where they're trying to get you to be, you know, sane in a world that they won't really acknowledge the insanity of. Well, that's not a good start, you know. Like, I'm saying, of course, it can work. It can help to, you know, to talk with other people and to get, you know, there's loads of different ways that people can do the path, but it's ultimately driven by the self and by this. Let's call it respection, if that's a word I've just coined. I don't know.
Yeah, so that's just it, isn't it? Like a lot of the mental illnesses that I've looked into, they are probably quite a healthy response to what you're talking about, Nemo. They're a healthy response to living in a world that's not quite right. Then it comes back to yourself again. To if each individual created the life that they feel is a better one, then we all might meet in the middle somewhere, mightn't we? Do you get what I mean? It's yeah. I'll say no more.
Yeah, but it's like some of these diagnoses seem a little exaggerated or fabricated, if you will, and it kind of just made up to sell more pharmaceuticals and prescription pills and that kind of stuff, which, you know, takes, you know, individuals away from, you know, their proper sovereign inner power. I feel a lot of times, not with everything. It's, you know, I don't want to fall into the pits of overgeneralizations, but yeah, we know about the pharmakia fuckery and all that stuff, and how it can have drastic effects upon people's mental mind states. And we always take it back to the first cosmic law principle, hermetic principle, if you will, of mentalism, you know. And so if people would really just study that, you know, crack open a simple book, which is pretty much like, you know, Natural Law 101 a la via the Kybalion, if you will. And yeah, just I was about to pull up the hermit card, because that kind of represents what we're talking about. Of, yeah, we have to have, you know, some times where we need to go into solitude to really extract ourselves from the matrix miasma and stuff, and even all outside influences and that kind of stuff, to really just hone it back into who you really are and keep that inner radar optimal, so you can pick up on the bullshit and stop yourself from, you know, thinking the programmed thoughts and that kind of stuff, and operating from those falsehoods, right? So yeah, it's like those things in regards to respecting yourself, looking back at yourself again and again, not just twice, not just thrice, but, you know, throughout your whole entire life, right? It's the ongoing alchemy that we all have to do. And you know, it's like yeah, that's part of cultivating love for yourself, because, you know, you can't love yourself if you can't even see yourself properly. You know, you got a lot of people living in delusion on kind of like a fake love for self sometimes, because they're not seeing themselves objectively, and kind of holding themselves accountable and to you know, high standard a lot of times, you know. It's that love evolution. Anyways, Ali, yeah,
That
you
reminds-
said, yeah, you'd comment on as well in regards to, yeah, just like hit the easy button, take the pill, and like that'll solve the problems. Don't do the inner work, you know, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know if you want to tail in on that or anything else, whatever.
So Bill W., the guy who wrote the big blue book of Alcoholics Anonymous, was a big fan of Jung. And so the 12 steps of AA are very similar to shadow work. And what you're saying, Derek, kind of reminds me, like, in AA, you have to hit a bottom first before you admit to yourself that, like, there's a problem. And that's kind of losing the ego and losing, you know, all the bullshit and getting down to the point where you're just like, I'm fucked, you know, like, I am fucked. And it's like, it's almost like when you're at that point, you know, you have to be at that point to finally give yourself up and admit that you aren't in control of everything and that you fucked things up immensely along the way. And like shadow work is like, it's like using radical authenticity and honesty to unlearn the intergenerational trauma that we don't even know we have, you know, and just like societal traumas and you know, fitting into society, being trained, you know, how we're supposed to think and believe. You know, if you don't have, you know, if you aren't a confident person, you know, it's like you have to be broken down and then you have to build that confidence up from there. And if you can't do that, you know, things are gonna end well and not well. Things aren't going to end well.
It's interesting that you brought that up, Jeffrey, about the AA, because I was talking to my friend Tommy yesterday about the AA and the 12 steps. And he was mentioning that, excuse me, that point that you just mentioned about getting on your knees and going, I'm fucked. I'm absolutely fucked. It's like that first calling within you where you're reaching for a higher realm. You're reaching for a higher realm. Like you become an alcoholic because what I'm trying to express to you, you've been born into this realm that's a complete and utter fuck up. So you have and you're probably a highly sensitive person in the first place, and you can't handle being in this realm, hence you become an alcoholic. And or any other addiction or whatever. And yeah, eventually you will reach that point and go, fucking, I need help. And you are actually opening yourself up to what we really are. We have got access to that higher realm. We have got access to it, but we've not been taught that in our culture. So it's actually like quite a very like spiritual time to reach that point. And that's why we mustn't be encourage people to not be frightened of hitting that rock bottom, because once you hit it, you can't go any lower. It's actually quite. I've had that experience. I've not been an alcoholic, but I've had that experience as well, Jeffrey, where you just can't go any lower. So there's only one way up, and there's no one else there to help you. So then you slowly build yourself up, and that's you building your resilience to it, with an awareness that there is more to life than what caused you to be an alcoholic in the first place. Yeah, it's just funny. I was talking about it last night.
Yeah, it's as I tell people all the time, you know, if you're having trouble understanding what shadow work is, just pick up a blue book and do the 12 steps. But you have to be willing to do it because it is not fun at all. So, you know, without actually hitting a bottom, you definitely need to be in the right mind space to do that. And like, you know, yikes, like I have tattoos on me that just say the dumbest things to me now. You know, like monster and shit like that, you know, that I don't even identify, like revenge, you know, like weird things that I don't identify with now that I just, you know, well, I was so stuck on back in the day because I was just fucked, like as fucked as a human could be and still be alive and functioning, you know. Just I didn't know if I was ever going to feel love again in my life, period, you know, because I had been so the excess was just, and yeah, that excess, we're not supposed to be exposed to that type of shit. You know, it's like only with technology are we able to kind of surpass these lines in the ground that you know, it makes it really easy to ignore natural law, you know, these days, technology and all that. But we can't forget because you know, we're supposed to be here doing heaven, you know, we're supposed to be having a really good time here. We're supposed to be manifesting you know, heaven here now, and the powers that be are against us right now. And so, you know, we have to stand up for ourselves. We have to stand up for humanity. We have to stand up for the animals. We have to stand up for all these things. You know, being a man is first taking care of yourself and then taking care of people around you and the world. So, you know, we just forget this stuff because, you know, in school, they teach us to compete, you know, oh, go out there and play baseball and, you know, score good on grades. And it's all just competition. They don't teach us self-respect or respect for any other people. They just teach us to compete. And like, you know, when I was in elementary school, they were testing out ADD drugs on me, and they made me take them in front of the fucking classroom. They would call in, the nurse would call the class and be like, Jeffrey needs to take his fucking pill. And all the kids would fucking laugh at me every fucking day. And they would make jokes about it. And it's like, you know, the adults in the 80s, man, they were all on cocaine or something. It's wild. But yeah, and like, and you know, those are the types of things. All of us have those stories. You know, we've all had our self-esteem deflated by everyone, you know, at certain points. And you just gotta be able to work through that shit and look on the inside and unlearn all that stuff and stop thinking the way they've trained you to think.
Absolutely. Can I just show you the tarot card that I picked for this group?
Yeah.
And what you've just expressed there, Jeffrey, I think we can all... It's this one, the Nine of Wands, which is basically, if you have a look, that is one hell of a soldier or warrior. Yeah.
He's had a rough life.
But you're still there. You're still holding in there, and you're still waiting, and you're still on the battlefield. All right.
You really just pulled that out? That's crazy.
Yeah, I was reflecting a couple of days ago on just the school experience, and I mean, I've written about it, how like it seems to be a pretty uniform experience. Well, I mean, it is, because you know, you see it, you just see it with parents and kids and whatever, like just in the street or around us, you know, this kind of, it's just basically what it comes down to is just a lack of commitment to truth, a lack of integrity, a lack of like, okay, what actually happened? Who actually hit the other person first? Like, let's actually get to the bottom of this, but seriously, because it's that in school. I think that's the pattern that we all experience, is this just blatant this disregard for justice, you know, like it doesn't matter. The teacher, the authority figure just does not care what really happened, and they're not going to pursue it, and they don't care if you feel put out or whatever. And I think this is just reinforced again and again through school. It's kind of, obviously it's hard to sort of remember, but that's my feeling, is that this is just a near universal experience of people, is just seeing adults not caring about the truth. You know, and you learn, oh, well, it seems like the truth actually doesn't matter. It's actually what you can get away with. That's all that matters, because this guy's just getting away with it all the time, you know, or whatever. Or I'm getting away with it, you know. Of course, I never did anything wrong. I was always a very good boy.
What do you think about this? Because I've spoken to my sister-in-law, works in a school, like an infants junior school. And we've had massive discussions, because obviously I don't like the education system. I took my children out. So we've always had quite heavy discussions about it. And she said, look, Yvonne, like she's a very caring person, and she's the kind of person that would sit and listen, Nemo. And she said she reckons about 60% of the kids in the school, if they didn't have that environment where they were showing them some kind of care, they're going home to families that don't actually give a fuck at all. She says she has parents picking the kids up, and the little ones are running to them going, "Mummy, mummy," and they've fucking got their faces in the phone.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
they don't. Do you get what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
when she said that to me, I was just like, oh fuck. You know, I don't know. I know it's not the answer, Nemo, and it's that she's working in yet again. You know, it's the effects in the world. But
Yeah.
we was talking about that, Derek. You know, like the experiences in the hospitals. We've had like positive experiences in there recently with people, even though like we don't like the pharmaceutical industry. But there are so many, the effects of not living natural law and not living objective morality out there that, I don't know.
Yeah.
There are, we talk about like immoral livelihoods, etc.
Yeah.
In the meantime, until people have learnt fucking objective morality and natural law and live like that, then some people need to be there to show care, surely. In the meantime,
Yeah.
I don't know how we got to that. Sorry, I debated it.
Yeah. Real quick, back to the classroom and the 9 wands they brought up. Yeah, that's a really fitting card that you correlated with Jeffrey's experience and stuff, and just in general with the shadow work and having to alchemize issues that arise, and kind of like being resilient and keeping that passionate fire burning within your heart, to keep that heart-based intelligence, keeping you keep on keeping on and all that stuff. And yeah, it sucks that kids can be so vain or overly dramatic or just silly, stupid, inconsiderate, immoral, whatever, right? We've all been there and all that kind of stuff. Yet, there's a lot of stains that are left on the brains and impressions of these young minds growing up that they carry into adulthood, right? And so that's what we're kind of alluding to in regards to resolving those, and kind of not letting it be regressed into our subconscious unconscious realm that would later project out, kind of like those negative projections and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it is that the alchemy of burning away all these falsities in things, like, oh, people were calling you names and whatever the hell, and that kind of stuff. Yet, yeah, we can see that they were in the wrong. The names didn't really apply to you at the time, kind of stuff. So you're burning away those falsities, and you're separating the, who you truly are from all that, fake shit and that kind of stuff. And then, go through the whole 7-stage process. I'm not going to get into it now, but because I know we're coming up on an hour and all that stuff. But yeah, wanted to pass it up. I'm going to save my concluding remarks for the last little round. But yeah, I want folks to understand as well that, like when we're talking about, having proper self-respect, it's not being selfish or service to self. It's the initial phase to loving yourself in order to have proper interactions with other people and have that service to others, right? It's kind of like having that love, because if you ain't got it, you don't have it to give to other people, right? So things to consider.
Right. Respect is about looking again at the information coming in, at the behaviors, that the environment is showing you, looking at that carefully, reconsidering it, thinking, hold on, is this legit? Is this, authentic? Does it have integrity? Is it aligned with truth? And then looking at what's already landed inside you, and that's already generating your way of behaving, your experience, and going, well, hold on, is this is this aligned with me and who I am, with my higher self? And yeah, as I kind of alluded to before, it's like we, in our younger days, it's very easy to get distracted and very confused, because you have passion about things, but that passion, you know, it merges with other strong feelings, and you think, oh, it's this that I like, you know, and you know, it takes I mean, it just seems to take time. Of course it takes time. I guess everything takes time to kind of separate oneself from these false ideas, basically, which is obviously what that, so it's essentially it's a process of enlightenment, you know, is what we're talking about, really. It's like rejecting the delusion, seeing the falsity for what it is, and kind of standing naked, you know, of all of that stuff, saying, oh, actually, what actually is bearable. That's kind of what it comes down to. It's like I actually can deal with things as they actually really are, because, you know, the world is so, as we, you know, always say, but I mean, there's no way around it. You know, we're in a bad age, right? It's not, things aren't great. Everyone, you ask anyone, people will say this. Yeah, it's not, things aren't quite how they, aren't the best that they could be, right? And it's, but acknowledging the reality of the situation is so much better than trying to fit into it when that's completely out of alignment with your higher self. It's completely out of alignment with truth. So when you do finally kind of yank yourself free, and I think someone was talking earlier, and I kind of remember this, and I've talked about it on the show before, but it kind of still surprises me when I really think into this, that there was a sort of an epiphany that I almost didn't notice as it kind of went past in my life. But now I'm looking back over the last, you know, 3, 4, 5 years, and realizing that for me, it was statism. It was when I realized that statism was just absolutely like a piss poor argument. There was nothing there that could possibly like sustain it as a concept legitimately. When that really landed with me, it was a spiritual shift, huge for me. That was the huge spiritual shift where I went, and that's okay, you know, and that's what all of my kind of longings for justice in my life and feeling out of place and whatever, it all kind of came down in a way for me to the realizing that, you know, when I really clearly saw that, and it was unarguable, I just was, it really freed me, and it made it, there is a scariness to it, you know, because it's going like, oh, so I guess that means I'm an anarchist, you know, with all that kind of entails in society potentially, or even, you know, internally. It's like, oh wow, so I'm really going off piste, you know, in my thinking. There's a fear to that, but there's also a groundedness, and it's like, well, there's nothing to fear anymore. It's all this actually starts to feel good, you know. It starts to feel like, whoa, I actually like being just me and the truth, you know, and I want more of this. It kind of becomes like a different way of approaching reality.
Yeah, I had a thought this week of how powerful we really are, and how like incredible we really are. Like, we've got so much potential, and yeah, to tap into that could really, really change things, because we've all been conditioned to be slaves, just to toe the line. That's all we've been conditioned to do. We ain't like we. My husband was telling me a story. He listened to a Joe Rogan show the other day. It just came up on his podcast thing, and he was interviewing a lady that I don't know if she had kids herself or she worked with children with a condition called apraxia, I think it was. So the children don't speak, but they've been researching these children, and these children have, because they're not using that particular sense. They've obviously tapped into some of their other, what scientists would call junk DNA, the parts of the brains that we've not learned to use yet. And these kids have created a telepathic chat room in which they're communicating with other kids through telepathy in other countries. So they've created their virtual chat room, and they've scientifically proven that they are actually communicating with each other. That's how much potential we've got. You know, look at the Aborigines. That most of their communication was through telepathy. There's so much. Maybe we're all suffering all these mental illnesses. We're suffering because we're so frightened of how powerful we actually are. You know? We've got huge amounts of power, and that's what they don't want us to know. That's why we're all consumed and like distracted all the time. That's why all that mind control's there. Because they don't want us to know how powerful we are.
Everything that needs that to happen could happen tomorrow.
Yes, it could. Have you ever had that feeling of how wonderful you actually are?
For me, it goes in stages.
I'm 54. I've only had it once last week. Once in my whole life.
Last week.
I intend to keep nurturing that. But that's what I'm just trying to point out. That's deep.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, cheers. It was hard to contain, Jeffrey. I was just like, what the fuck do I do with this?
You definitely don't seem as doomy as last week.
Oh, cheers, Jeffrey.
Yeah, it's more about, you know, channeling that mind power, that intent, that energy towards, you know, something righteous and all that stuff. And
absolutely.
Yeah, it sucks. We're all kind of in this boat as humanity. Kind of what I was talking about in the chat today, commented on just how like humanity is suffering cosmic amnesia, and we're cut off significantly from source. And if we do tap more into ourselves, yes, we will get those telepathic, clairvoyance, and other more stellar attributes just activated from within, type of thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we need that multi-dimensional 100th monkey effect, for, you know, kind of like we were talking about. Like things could kind of flip for the better in certain ways if can pierce these veils and thresholds, it seems. But yeah, Chris, what's good, or whoever else. So.
Yeah, Chris, did you want to come in? Nope. Chris is done. What about Ali? I haven't heard from you for a bit. Any closing thoughts?
I'm kind of reminded of I wrote this in the chat already, but I reminded of a sermon I was listening to on Saturday, discussing the idea of meekness, and we kind of connect that with weakness, right? But really, it has more to do with humility. Actually, I wrote something. So God encourages us to voluntarily embrace meekness, which is really embracing vulnerability rather than reaching towards our strength in, let's say, wickedness, or strength in avoiding, going back to our shadow work and avoiding our shadow. Whereas like society's hardened us into this state of survival. So where avoiding our shadow and avoiding looking inward, we may be stronger and be able to be more productive in society. But really, we need to be reaching towards and allowing ourselves to be more vulnerable and embracing meekness. Meekness allows ourselves to surrender to the divine. What is the divine? It's truth. I mean, that is the ultimate, what is the ultimate message from source, from God, whatever you want to call it. It's really embracing truth, and really it's a state of surrender. And through that surrender and what we maybe interpret as weakness, there lies the true strength and the true the space for growth and healing, and a better tomorrow, so to speak.
Yeah, Ali, that reminds me of something else I heard this week. I think that's what you're trying to say. It's like sometimes we need to just get out of our own way, the internal chatter. I think that's what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on real quick because, yeah, it made me think of, and I like that passage because it makes you think of we can all have our vulnerabilities and stuff and have those humilities. But yeah, the thing is to respect one's own vulnerability and other people's, and not take advantage of that, because to look back again, like, oh yeah, that we can, it's like that in Lakesh, you're like another version of me. You're taking it back to like the law of one and that kind of stuff, so yeah, it's pretty cool. I like that. And yeah, I guess closing thoughts. Yeah, it sucks that the youth is brought up or growing up in this digital age of what seems to be somewhat of a dystopia setting, but not to fall into the pits of diasma or whatever the hell, but yeah, it just seems like they're not doing the proper self-reflection, and they have their eyes too much on the black mirror or the black slab via your phone. Yes, this is an old phone. It's really small, and I like it that way. Not focused on the proper magic mirror and seeing with the windows of the soul properly, right? But yeah, it's just like too much exterior spectating out there, and they're kind of having ego attachments to things that aren't their aligned to natural law or their true selves and that kind of stuff. And so they fall into all these dynamics that are not the best for these young impressionable minds that can be easily swayed any fucking direction, right? And yeah, it's just this whole instant gratification stuff is counterintuitive to the actual alchemical process and the evolution process, and just mastering oneself. Sorry about the noise. So you don't get it in a single podcast or just a single year of doing the inner work and this and that. We have to see it more as like a marathon, right? So we have to have patience and proper care with that patience for ourselves and for other people. And yeah, like life is a marathon. You could say life is a race. Don't be living life in the fast lane. But hey, if life is a racist, does that make us racist? If life is a race, yeah, I fucked that up, but you know what I mean. I'm just being a little silly at the end, but whatever. Is that why the word is being used so often, right, these days? What the hell, right? No, just kidding. People are not respecting vocabulary. They need to look back again at the etymology of things, right? So yeah, not this flim flam word salad stuff. Anyways.
Cool. Right. Any very last thoughts before I wrap it up? Cool. All right. Well, thanks all. Good show. I think next week, well, next on the list, as far as I can see, is right action. So we'll probably have a poll in the Telegram group, but that seems like a good one to me. So you could join the Telegram group by following the links in the description. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And from me and from us, it's goodbye. I'm Nemo Jones, reporting for Beauty, and I'll see you next time. And now I have to press buttons.
Ciao.
Oh. Okay, almost there.